Hello, and welcome to Informatically Speaking, a Greater Delaware Valley ANIA podcast designed to promote knowledge sharing in the field of nursing informatics, locally, nationally, and globally within our unique industry. At GDV ANIA, we are committed to providing opportunities for professional development with the goal of advancing nursing informatics practice. I'm your host, Constance McLaughlin. Welcome back to the GDV ANIA podcast, Informatically Speaking, a podcast for nurse informaticists and informatics enthusiasts alike. In this episode, we welcome two guests, which is new for us, Dr. Mary Tietze and Jennifer Weber, to discuss techno-stress and new nursing grads. Dr. Mary Tietze is the recipient of the Myrna R. Pickard Endowment Professorship at the University of Texas at Arlington, College of Nursing and Health Innovation. She's also the director of the Graduate Certificate and Master's in Nursing Health Informatics at UTA as well, and the project lead for the BSN and Graduate Nursing Curriculum Program in Curriculum Integration of the academic EHR used by faculty and students. That is a mouthful, Dr. Tietze. And then also we have Jennifer Weber, who is a PhD candidate. She is a doctoral candidate in nursing at the University of Texas at Arlington, with a focus on techno-stress in nursing education. This is a new word for me, techno-stress, and probably new for others. So we're excited to dive into this topic. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having
us. Thank you.
So Dr. Tietze, you see informatics through a different lens from the academic side. In your daily work, you know the struggles of new nurses before they become new nurses. You know the stresses of new nurses before they enter their new healthcare employers, not to mention all of the technology introduced seemingly on a daily basis to our current nursing staff in their facilities. And I happen to know that you know an awful lot about the stressors of new nurses and that you are working to help relieve some of that. I read a draft of one of your papers that will be coming out shortly with other colleagues. Explain to us, if you will, the key technology issues in the transitioning right now in nursing practice.
Thank you for letting me talk about, it's one of my favorite topics, but it's not a pretty topic. I think it is getting more and more concerning, over time. But the widespread implementation of electronic health records, as many of you remember, in 2009 and so forth, went pretty quickly. And we are in the process of experiencing that from a provider perspective. Although there's been a lot of positives with the EHR, there's been a clear lead to increased stress, dissatisfaction, and administrative burden among nurses, but also among other providers, physicians, and all those that are involved with caring for the patient. And in fact, this has led to the Surgeon General in May of 2022 and his report on burnout in healthcare workers. And it also led to the book by the National Academy of Medicine called Taking Action Against Clinician Burnout, a systematic approach to provide professional well-being. So it's impacting well-being. We see, as you know, the suicide rate in nurses is higher than the average population of females, because we're mainly females. Okay. it's not going down. In fact, it's going up. So that's just another sad indicator of what's going on here. So we've got this awesome report by the National Academy of Medicine that gives a 9-step process for organizations to be careful about and to implement it. But it's not that easy because it takes informaticists to understand the impact on the nurses, on those caring for the patient. So, for example, it says that there's a systematic change to improve patient safety has to occur as well, and that taking action has to be done in a aggregate way in the culture. So it's not just easy, let me fix the EHR. Okay, so that's one thing we're noticing. I tend to be involved with nurses because I believe that nurses need to have the muscle memory of actually having their hands on a keyboard and taking care of a patient at the same time. Why is that so important? The practice, those in hospitals right now, our practice partners are telling me, and I'm actually seeing it, that we must be charting real time. If we aren't charting real time into the digital health record, the predictive analysis and the ambient listening and the summarization that goes on now in the background is faulted, right? So the patient looks more well than they are. And then all of a sudden, when a bunch of data goes in from the providers, they're all of a sudden they're sick. Okay, so the practice partners I have worked with have said, UTA, whoever's teaching the nurses, can you please get them to be charting real time? Because when I get them, not only do they not know the EHR, only 60% of the schools of nursing actually have an EHR, and the degree to which they're being used varies significantly. Okay, so this is where I want to point out that there are 3 ways that you're going to do the teaching. One is you're going to do it didactically. What does an EHR look like? And how do I can just do it on my computer? The second thing is in a simulation lab, and I'll get back to that in just a bit. So they're actually taking care of the mannequin while they're teaching, using the electronic health record and looking up the information on the mannequin in simulation. And then the third one, and the highest level, is clinical site. And that is where they actually have, most hospitals, only 10% of the hospitals in this area allow the nurses, students to be charting in their own electronic health systems. So, and if they do, it's minimal. And if they do, it's being guided by somebody else, a preceptor. So what we do is we have the students have their own laptop or iPad, or they can use a workstation at the hospital, and they're charting into our electronic health record. Okay, so it's an academic EHR, but it's what they're used to. They've been charting on it for 2 years, and now they're continuing to chart on it as if they were charting into the provider's electronic health record. And by the way, one more thing, and then I'll let Jennifer take over, but about Techno-stress, it's actually even better for the faculty because the faculty can get a printout of everything that got charted. They don't have to go look into the provider's EHR to see what was done and validate. They can actually see it in what was charted in and it's they have a key to what they're expecting, and then they have what the actual student did, and they can improve upon it from there. So through it all, what we've learned is that there's plenty of techno-stress to go along. We now have a term for it. And Jennifer is going to, if you want, we can actually go to that next if you'd like.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Tietze, thank you for that. I could jump off of so many points that you brought up while you were speaking. And what jumps out to me is that, it's true that I am learning through you and a few others just recently that the nursing schools don't have EHRs. For the most part, they don't. So your school, you're lucky to have that, that you can properly teach these newer nurses what they need to be doing with the technology, because the thing that makes me, I think, concerned about this is that you have, for the most part, people coming into the nursing profession that have no experience, right? That's why they're in nursing school, because they don't have the medical experience and they don't have the tactical experience, right? So many of us, myself included, 20 some years ago, when I was in nursing school, I was working as a tech. So I already knew how to empty a Foley. I already knew how to do some of those things with my hands already. But when you think about people that are coming in through nursing school that have no exposure whatsoever, so they don't know what to do with their hands, they're trying to keep all of this information and make sense of it in their brains, and then they have to touch all of the technology that goes along with it. That's a huge ask for anyone, and I think a lot of people too think, well, how difficult is it to put some stuff into the EHR? And that's the reason why we're talking about this here on an informatics podcast, because it takes the informaticists, it takes the work of the informaticist and the expertise to help keep that connection as smooth as possible. But we need to have them have a leg up through you so that they are learning this stuff before they get in. The other piece that I was thinking about is they don't have the access in these institutions where they're doing clinical rotations because of all the cyber threats. It is so tight. The security is so tight anymore. I know where I work, we don't allow students to have access. We allow the nursing instructor to have access only to get the information on patients that they want their nurses to be studying and shadow those nurses. But I mean, like I said, there's just so many things that we could talk about and jump off of there. It's pretty mind blowing.
But I'll put the word at scaffolding. So we go from foundations where they're learning how to take blood pressures and count pulses, okay? But we start then. We scaffold them up, and until the time that they're a senior too, then they're more functional. So it's a purposeful approach. And I love what you said, Constance, and that nurse informaticists, you can't have the faculty who's got the less workload be the one implementing this. You've got to have someone who knows SDLC, system development lifecycle, troubleshooting errors that are coming up for the students, and using it and keeping track of the technology. And that's what I think has made ours successful. We have 2,200 nurses using the system in a year. So it's a lot.
That's
Okay, so thank you
incredible.
for letting me say that.
Absolutely. No, that's incredible. I think this could certainly last a lot longer than what we're expecting. We'll have to have you back so we can talk more about this for sure. So Jennifer, welcome. So glad that you're here with us. Why don't you talk a little bit about Techno-stress and tell us what you're doing in that area?
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this. When I first heard the term techno-stress, I kind of had maybe an idea based off of the word, but I didn't have really any understanding of it. So techno-stress is really just the stress that is caused by the use of technology. It was first identified over in kind of the corporate America world. That's where it was measured and studied, and how, if you think about how technology has evolved over time, just the use of technology and how it's infiltrating most of our lives and how that makes us extremely stressed to an extent. What I thought was interesting with it was focusing it back onto the MSN education program. So my background is I have an MSN in education in 2011. I didn't have any sort of help with it. It's kind of like figure out the tech as you go along. And so I think that's really kind of doing a disservice to the students that we have. So my dissertation is on measuring techno-stress in MSN education students so we can first understand what their levels of stress are. And then once we have those down, then we can use that feedback to better inform the ways that we are changing and adapting the curriculum so that their stress is minimal, and then that way they're able to learn better and hopefully use that knowledge to then teach future nurses and gain that without being so overworked and overstressed. I wanted to first look at this population, then maybe expand it to others, because in Texas, you just have to have a master's degree to teach. It's not, it doesn't matter what it's in. And I know each state does it differently, but I wanted to start with them first and then move out. I know other programs are doing certificate programs too, that I'm not looking at that in particular because that's a whole nother part of it. But I wanted to look at this piece first. So that's just kind of a background of it. Symptoms of techno-stress, that can be like increased cognitive load, emotional fatigue, difficulty really balancing that work-life boundaries, and then just being resistant to technology. I've worked with some nurses who don't like any sort of change. Whenever tech comes and it's new, they're kind of scared of it, don't want anything to do with it. That just feeds back into their levels of techno-stress are higher. So there are tools that can be used to measure it. And one of the tools that I'm using within my study it's open content tool. It's by Upithaya and Brenda 2021. It's actually called the Techno-stress scale. And I picked it because it looks at techno-stress in academic environment. So we're wanting to see not just in the corporate area, but this one's adapted so we can look in higher education students and see that. It looks at 6 different domains. And then it also looks at academic productivity. So with this tool, it's a 5-point Likert scale. Higher scores mean you're more stressed out. Lower scores, you don't have as much technological stress. So it's validated and has all the reliability. It's a good tool to use. It's supposed to measure, it does what it says it's going to measure. So I'm looking at techno-stress and seeing how students are affected, how it can significantly contribute to techno-stress, looking at GPA, technical skill ability, age, and then years of nursing experience, and see if that has any impact too on levels of techno-stress. So I know there's a lot of factors we can incorporate into that, but I started with those, kind of get like a base of what we see with techno-stress. And I'm really excited to do this because it'll be the first study that's ever looked at MSN education students. There's a couple other studies done out of Louisiana that looked at nurse educators, but not the actual students. So it measured techno-stress in nurse educators with a different tool. This one is just going to be the students themselves. So I'm really excited to do this and hope that with knowing what their levels of stress are, I really want to really kind of modify their curriculum. The response stress I've gotten so far, there's a qualitative open question component to it. It's really helpful. The students report that it would be nice if we use the same technology throughout the program instead of changing it over and over again. And I hadn't really considered that, but that is something that could be easily corrected if we had like the same kind of thing. So just kind of that feedback too will be really impactful in making the curriculum the best that we can and kind of mitigating that techno-stress levels. So I'm really excited to move forward with the results of the study. I'm right now in data collection, so I'm hoping to finish that up over the summer and then start with the analysis in the fall and get this done.
That is amazing work. I just think about all of the just what you said about changing the way the curriculum just flows, right? And looking into that just based on your study. And I'm sure once you study this, you're going to want to take it further and take it to the next step and really dive a little bit deeper, I'm sure. But that is just amazing to think that you're taking this one piece of I'll just call it a stressor for now, but that it could affect the way that they're learning and the way their outcomes before they even get into work and leave school and get into the real world. That's pretty amazing. One thing though that you said about the symptoms, The symptoms sound to me that they mirror a lot of other stress categories, I guess. So how, I guess, and I'm putting you on the spot here, just thinking about how you would know the difference between whether it's from the actual technology or if it's other life factors, or, people that are in school are still working. If they're not, that's great. I wish that I didn't have to work when I was in school, but you're working, so you have that stress, you have your family stress, you have your car breaks down, and all kinds of stuff are happening. How do you know that it's the technology that is the issue? Does it come from the tool? Is it built into your tool?
Right. It comes from the tool. So you're not wrong that it's hard to figure out which one it is. The tool itself, it looks at like techno overload. So that's feeling pressure to work faster and longer due to technology. So all the questions are very technological based to try to like weed out those technology points that are what's stressful. There's like techno invasion, blurring that work life. Work in this context would be like their school and do their life balance. How much is that inherent in their life? How has that helped or affected them? Like techno uncertainty is like stress from constant technological changes and updates, because that happens with any kind of program. So all the questions are focused on technology, which really kind of helps to say, okay, the stress, it could be related to also to other things, but at least we kind of know the stress and the technology is what I'm really concentrating on with within this tool, the techno-stress scale.
Thanks. Yeah, it's important, and my mind is just racing. There's so many different ways to jump off and have this conversation. And like I said, I think Dr. Tietze, you're going to have to come back because we have way too much to talk about with this.
This tool is used throughout all industries, and you can get a rating now for how techno-stress friendly or not your organization is. That's how important it is, not just to us in healthcare, but everywhere. So we could do a whole hour on this. Jennifer kind of had to do it quickly, but yeah, the domains, those 6 domains are clearly, and it gives you a direction on where you need to make the difference for those that are in your organization. And in our case, we're plugging the dam. See, she and I are two sides of the same coin. I'm actually doing it with the students. She's actually taking care of the faculty. We need the faculty to not have stress. And we need to teach them how to teach not having stress. So we're plugging the dam with her, is that when we can get the faculty and the educators that are educating the students to understand and not be stressed, then we will start making strides within the students themselves, and they won't need me anymore.
So why don't we, and before we move on, just another thought popped into my head about, well, I don't want to say real-time charting because I don't think we're there yet, but near real-time charting, I'll say, is, I think it's a really difficult thing to manage when you have to keep putting your hands on the keyboard. And I know that vendors are working toward removing that burden, and having to be a typist to type your notes. But I also think that there's a lot of work that our nursing bodies have to do, in terms of what all the regulations are and the information that has to go into this, into the EHR, in the inpatient space, and what it is that they have to chart and all of that. So again, another time, I think, for that conversation. But I just can't help but think all of and of course for providers, we call it pajama time, but you will see nurses sometimes 8:30, 9 o'clock at night because they didn't finish charting from the day. And, I coming from the ICU, I remember even on paper, there were some nurses still standing at the desk trying to focus just to get their notes done from the day because it was such a crazy day, for lack of a better word. And you're constantly running, and you could have, patients just going south on you. And just trying to keep up with the documentation all day long is an effort in itself. But then you compound it with all of the different technologies that come into play. So it's a difficult situation, no matter what you do, because you're so stressed to begin with as a nurse, in the inpatient space. But trying to document all of that near real time, I think, is the biggest stressor.
I think the physicians are making a little bit of progress in that they're what we call verbally caring. So they just put their phone down and they start talking. And the reason is because, and then the idea is that the real ambient listening gives it them back, and they're so happy. There was one just the other day. We were at a conference at HIMSS in Texas, lauding. He says, I was going to retire and I'm not going to retire now because I'm happy taking care of patients again because I can do this. So we're actually trying to start to go back to teaching care and talk at the same time. Oh, hi, Mr. Smith. I am here to look at your wound from your surgical site. Oh, look at this. I see that it's a little red. And so you're actually talking like you used to when you were a student, so that your professor would know what's going on. We might go back to that, and it's picking that up with the ambient listening. So that's kind of on the horizon to think about.
It is. It's a shame it's taking too long. I think, in my opinion, it's taking way too long to get there. I think nurses needed it first, but we let the docs work out the kinks, right? So, Dr. Tietze, let's take it back to you. Let's talk a little bit about the transition to practice from school and some of the use of real world insights.
Yeah. So we want to, number one, have the proper roles in the proper activities. So I'm advocating that someone, like I said before, is familiar with implementation, be overseeing this. And by the way, this is just like implementing an academic EHR is just like implementing a regular EHR in the hospitals. Okay. It's the only thing that's different is that you are controlling the patient descriptions, because what faculty A used to use for her cardiac lecture and her simulation gets handed to me, and I put it in to the academic HR. So no more paper's gone, and now that patient is now in the EHR. So we have it controlled that way. That's why it's called an academic EHR. So that in and of itself needs somebody with some technical background and understanding of doing that. Okay. So that was one thing about the transition to practice, is to bring the faculty along. They're your Achilles heel. I love them, but you need to take care of them too and understand their plight in the process of going technology wise. The other one is, this is the key to our study, is post-graduation. The name of this is about grads, right? So our senior twos are going to graduate. They're going to be evaluated in terms of their competencies in documenting on the EHR, in terms of confidence, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of turnover rates. Are they still here a year later? Okay. As we know, 30% of the new graduates are not in the same position they came into at the end of the year. And why is that? Okay. So when you get your practice partner on the other side of this, and this is why I'm advocating this for, is that you can get agreements with them to have the metrics. You don't have to know the exact student, but they know who they hired, from your organization, and that you can get that feedback. They want you to know it. Okay. And you're hoping to see a difference. We're hoping to see a difference between the previous graduates that they had and the ones that we have now. Have had 2 years of scaffolding on an academic EHR. We're hoping that it actually not, we think, may estimate take off 4 weeks of their onboarding in terms of their 6 months process. It's not a lot, but we believe it'll push them ahead. And that turns into dollars, for them. So there's the value proposition that we'd like to talk about. The other thing is, and let's don't forget, maybe some of you don't have it tried and true to your heart, but the essentials of nursing practice changed in 1921. And there's a whole domain that us nurse informaticists wanted in there called information technology and informatics. And those have to be accommodated. That's why we call this an integration into the curricula. You don't just say, oh, yes, we have a course called nursing informatics, and that's where they learn about the EHR. It can't be, it's got to be integrated through OB, through geriatrics, through pediatrics, through all the different rotations. That's how you get accredited. And so it's a combination of working with your practice partners to see what they want you, what's on the horizon, which they told me 2 years ago, Mary, if you can just get them documenting as they deliver care, that would help me so much, because I'm still working with our own staff and they aren't doing it, type thing. And then having the essentials at front of mind on our side, and then are we meeting that? But it's about technology, domain number 8. So then we have happier well-being for the students. We're hopefully they won't be turning over at the end of the year because they've got this. And the other thing we do, Constance, is we give them the real life thing. Go, look, it's not a picnic out there. Okay, you're going to experience some things in Epic or in Cerner or in Meditech or whatever you're using that aren't going to go well for you. But you've got control of that. Talk to your supervisors about it. Be part of the governance structure of the organization. We don't have it yet, but you can be part of it, and don't turn your back on us in your frustration.
As we're onboarding new grads, even folks that are transferring from other institutions, and I know this just from the current work that I'm doing in my organization, is proper onboarding through orientation. So yes, there's a huge focus with clinical education, but if informatics isn't part of that, then they're going to lose it, right? So your new grads that may be coming in, of course, that are privileged to have come from an organization such as yours that focuses on that. Of course, we know that that doesn't happen everywhere, but coming into the orientation process where you're learning how to use the instance of the EHR wherever you're coming from, you learn to use that, but it has to be in conjunction, exactly what you're saying, in conjunction with the nursing practice. And if you don't have that, you need to at least try to simulate that. There's a lot of places have sim labs where they have the mannequin. Some are more advanced than others, but having informatics there to help show them the way. Of course, that could be another hour's worth of conversation. But then I jump to preceptor programs where you have a comprehensive education program for the preceptors in the hospitals, even in offices that are fully understanding and integrated with the informatics team and the clinical educators, so that they're not taking these new folks backwards or having them say, oh, I don't do it that way. It's much easier to do it this way. And then they start breaking down what they just learned because they're looking for something easier, right? And if their preceptor says, well, that's easier, then they think, oh, well, that must be easier. So again, it's so interesting to talk about the real world because we're all seeing different things.
Yeah. I mean, at least we're we can't abdicate our role in academia for teaching digital documentation. And if we give them the guardrails, whenever something happens that they say, oh no, this is how you do that, at least they have some guidance as to, well, that's not quite what I've learned. I guess I'll try, at least they're having some kind of a platform on which to, whereas before it was just the preceptors of the world are teaching the new graduates.
We could talk about this for another 8 hours. We have enough, certainly enough to keep going, but I think we're going to have to land here. This is such an interesting topic. Jennifer, I'm so glad that you're here with us talking about this, that you're giving us some understanding about what techno-stress is, that it is a thing, that our informaticists that are listening can now start to think about and absorb what that means in terms of our, not only our new grads coming in, but anybody that's coming in through orientation, refresher courses that they might be thinking about throughout the year, what they could be doing during skills fairs in the space as well. There's just so many different things that our informaticists do in the community and in the hospital as well, that they could certainly take all of this information to heart and see what they can do to be creative and take our folks to the next level. Mary, do you want to wrap us up here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I just have 3 points to make.
Absolutely.
Number one, I do not in any way suggest that preceptors of the world don't know how to teach documentation. All I'm saying is there is no global standard that I can see
Right.
that the students would be experiencing. We now have, through the new essentials, have the standards. We have the standards of documentation. We have them in those 100 and 200 or so competencies. Okay, so thank you for letting me make that point. The second point is that Jennifer is one of the few in the area of in healthcare where they're in academia that is measuring techno-stress. And so I want to emphasize that she would be more than happy to have people contact her. She's spent a lot of time getting up to date on this, and she's going to this is going to be her life's work. So that was the second point. The third point is that we have an ability to get everybody who's interested in being part of what we call the academic EHR in NAXL, that's the International Nursing Clinical Simulation Learning Simulation Lab in NAXL, but we've got a QR code, Constance, that I can give you. And if anybody's interested in being part of or just listening to, there's a group of us that are learning to do academic EHR in SimLab. Okay, that's why it's in an Axel. You were talking about that's where we want to have it, right? Is in our sim labs that we have the electronic health record. I can give you that as part of this, and then they can just type in their information. We've got 75 so far that we've gathered throughout the country that are interested, and we're going to be starting to do a special interest group of academic EHR in simulation for those people.
That's awesome. I want to click on the QR code. You have to send it to me. We'll put it on the
Put
on
there.
the page, yeah, so that people can sign
Just
up
put
for
in
that.
a few things your email, and then we'll get you, and you'll start learning together as much as you want to be involved or not. So those
That's
were my
excellent.
3 points. So thank you for allowing me that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think this has been such an interesting topic. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely have to have you back. We're going to have to dive down into all of the different pieces that we only were able to touch on. I would love to dissect a few more of those topics with you.
Happy to do it.
Definitely. Sounds good.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. And we'll close it up for now.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll join us again for another session of Informatically Speaking.
This has been a production of the Greater Delaware Valley chapter of the American Nursing Informatics Association. For more information about the GDV ANIA chapter, visit us at community.ania.org/Greater Delaware Valley/home.